Hello everybody, we're going to hit you up with another presidential election. This one, the election of 2000. It's a barn burner. Who's going to win it? Let's find that out right now. Now, the incumbent party is the Democratic Party. The incumbent, Bill Clinton from Arkansas, has reached his 2-term limit. So the Democratic nomination left sort of wide open. The consistent front runner for the Democratic nomination throughout the whole primary season was Vice President Al Gore of Tennessee. He is going to face opposition for a time from Bill Bradley of New Jersey, but at the end of the day, Gore is going to unanimously win the Democratic nomination for president, and he's going to choose Senator Joe Lieberman of Connecticut as his running mate. Lieberman is the first Jewish American ever to be chosen for this position by a major party. Now that we have our Democratic ticket of Gore and Lieberman, let's take a look at the Republicans. Now, the Republican nomination, obviously, more wide open. The candidates put themselves up for nomination were the governor of Texas, George W. Bush, the father of the 41st president, George H.W. Bush, Senator John McCain of Arizona, Alan Keyes of Maryland, Steve Forbes of New Jersey, Gary Bauer of Kentucky, Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah, Elizabeth Dole of North Carolina, Pat Buchanan of Virginia, Dan Quayle of Indiana, Bush 41's vice president, Lamar Alexander of Tennessee, Senator Bob Smith of New Hampshire, Congressman John Kasich of Ohio, and Herman Cain of Nebraska. At the end of the day, it is going to be Bush who receives the Republican nomination for president, and he's going to select Dick Cheney as his running mate. Now, Dick Cheney also was from Texas, and under the Constitution, electors were prohibited from casting both of his or her votes for persons from his or her own state. So Cheney ends up changing his voter registration back to Wyoming. So his home state is Wyoming in this election. Had Cheney not done this, either he or Bush would have forfeited their electoral votes from electors in Texas. So the Republicans could have lost Texas had Cheney not changed his voter registration back to Wyoming. But nonetheless, now that we have our Democratic ticket of Gore and Lieberman and our Republican ticket of Bush and Cheney, let's put these guys into the ring and see who's going to win this thing. Now, although the campaign would focus mainly on domestic issues such as the projected budget surplus, proposed reforms of Social Security and Medicare, healthcare, and competing plans for tax relief, foreign policy was often an issue. Bush criticized the Clinton administration policies in Somalia, where 18 Americans died in 1993, trying to sort out warring factions, and in the Balkans, where U.S. peacekeeping troops performed a variety of functions. Bush said in the second presidential debate, "I don't think our troops ought to be used for what's called nation building." Bush also pledged to bridge partisan gaps in the nation's capital, claiming the atmosphere in Washington stood the way of progress on necessary reforms. Gore, meanwhile, questioned Bush's fitness for the job, pointing to gaps made by Bush in interviews and speeches, and suggesting the Texas governor lacked the necessary experience to be president. Now, President Clinton's impeachment and the sex scandal that led up to it casted a shadow on the campaign, particularly on Gore's run to replace him. And Republicans strongly denounced the Clinton scandals, particularly Bush, who made his repeated promise to restore honor and dignity to the White House a centerpiece of his campaign. The sex scandal was alleged that President Clinton had sexual relations with a White House intern by the name of Monica Lewinsky. Clinton denied it in front of national television, but it was found that he lied about it. He lied about it to Congress, so the House of Representatives ends up impeaching him on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice. He goes to trial in the Senate because, remember, for a president to be removed from office, they got to be convicted by the Senate. and Clinton ends up keeping his office. But although Clinton was not removed from office, the scandal casted a shadow on Gore's campaign. Now, Gore avoided the Clinton scandals, as did Lieberman, even though Lieberman had been the first Democratic senator to denounce Clinton's misbehavior. In fact, some media observers theorized that Gore actually chose Lieberman in an attempt to separate himself from Clinton's past misdeeds and help blunt the GOP's attempts to link him to his boss. Others pointed to the passionate kiss Gore gave his wife, Tipper, during the Democratic convention as a signal that despite the allegations against Clinton, Gore himself was a faithful husband. Gore avoided appearing with Clinton, which was deliberate, who was shunted to low visibility appearances in areas where he was popular. Experts have argued that this cost Gore votes from some of Clinton's core supporters. Now, Ralph Nader was the most successful of the third-party candidates who drew 2.74% of the popular vote in the election. His campaign was marked by traveling 12 large super rallies held in sports arenas like Madison Square Garden, with retired talk show host Phil Donahue as master of ceremonies. After initially ignoring Nader, the Gore campaign made a pitch to potential Nader supporters in the final weeks of the campaign, downplaying Gore's differences with Nader on the issues and arguing that Gore's ideas were more similar to Nader's than Bush's were, and noting that Gore had a better chance of winning than Nader. On the other side, the Republican Leadership Council ran pro-Nader ads in a few states in an effort to split the liberal vote. In the aftermath of the campaign, many Gore supporters claimed that Nader acted as a spoiler in the election, that Nader votes would have been cast for Gore, and that Nader threw the election outcome to Bush. We'll talk about the cray-cray results in a second. Nader dismissed such concerns, claiming his objective in the campaign was to pass the 5% threshold, so his Green Party would be eligible for matching funds in future races. Now, both vice presidential candidates Dick Cheney and Joe Lieberman campaigned aggressively in this election, and both camps made numerous campaign stops nationwide, often just missing each other, such as when Cheney, Hadassah Lieberman, and Tipper Gore, Hadassah is Joe Lieberman's wife, attended Chicago's Taste of Polonia over Labor Day weekend. Now, with that in mind, let's get to the results because they're gonna get a little bit cray-cray up there. Yeah. Now, this election hinges on Florida, and there are 25 electoral votes. But Florida's margin of victory, the margin of victory in Florida was so close that a required recount had to take place. But then another recount ended up having to happen, but eventually the Supreme Court ruled in a 5-4 decision, Bush versus Gore, to stop the recounts in Florida and award Florida's 25 electoral votes and the presidency to George W. Bush. So Bush's brother Jeb, who was the governor of Florida, certified that Florida had voted for Bush and therefore Bush had won the presidency. And taking a look at the numbers, it is 271 votes for Bush Jr., Bush 43 now, and the Republicans to 266 for Gore and the Democrats. had the Supreme Court's decision gone the other way, Gore and the Democrats would have won this election. 30 states, including Florida, are going to be voting Republican and vote for Bush. 20 states in the District of Columbia are going to be voting Democratic, and they're going to vote for Gore. But Al Gore does win the popular vote, 48.4% to Bush's 47.9%. This is the fourth and most recent presidential election in American history. The other three, 1824, 1876, and 1888. I'd recommend you go see those videos because those are quite a few barn burners in the 19th century, from the 19th century elections. But this is the fourth and most recent presidential election in which a candidate wins the popular vote but does not win the presidency. But at the end of the day, in a squeaker, Bush wins. He is the 43rd president of the United States. And with that in mind, this concludes the election of 2000. We have 3 more election videos left. So hopefully you can stick with me through the end. Next time we're going to get into the election of 2004. Bush is going to go for the second term, but can he get it done? We'll find that out next time. And with that, I hope you have an excellent day, and we'll see you in the next video.